All right, so it looks like we are live. What's up, Action Tribe? AJ here, host and founder of My Seven Chakras, my7chakras.com, the show where we help you calm your mind, relax your nervous system, and experience deep states of bliss and happiness. In today's episode, we're going to explore some really important topics such as intuition. What exactly is intuition? The types of intuition that we can potentially tap into, how to access your intuition, how to trust yourself when you sort of tap into your intuition and then find your soul's purpose, and much more. So, this is an episode that you'll want to listen to the very end because it's going to be really, really exciting, also actionable. So if you'd like to explore such topics in your car or maybe even at home, then make sure that you hit the subscribe button, especially if you're on your iPhone, because that'll ensure that you get all the episodes. And if you're on Spotify, then hit follow because that does something special to the algorithm and allows our podcast to be in front of new eyes, new ears, and I guess new mouths. But do that so that we are able to spread the word. And if you'd like to join our official Facebook group of our podcast, a place where all the exclusive conversations happen, and we do talk about breath work as well, then go to my7chakras.com/tribe. It's my7chakras.com/tribe. All right. With that being said, it's time to bring on our special guest for today, Kim Chestney. So, Kim is the author of Radical Intuition, a globally recognized innovation leader and founder of Intuition Lab. Her work has been featured or supported by leading edge organizations such as South by Southwest Interactive, Carnegie Mellon University, Comcast, and Hewlett-Packard. While working as a leader in the tech sector, Kim recognized the tremendous role that intuition plays in business and cultural progress and set out on a quest to learn everything there is to know about it. And as a result of nearly nearly 2 decades worth of research and practice, she has developed a powerful system that anyone can tap into to access their inner wisdom in extraordinary ways. So, really, really exciting. And Kim, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you tonight.
Yeah, me too. It's supposed to be an auspicious night, especially in India,
Indeed.
because it is Diwali, the festival of lights. And there's actually a transformation going on in India as well, and this started many decades back because, as you know, India and Diwali is associated with firecrackers, but people are becoming more and more conscious as they let go of that external firecrackers and realize the light that is within them. You know, the lamp within, the essence within, and I think that's connected to our own intuition, right?
It absolutely is. That inner light growing so strong. That's such a beautiful metaphor. And it's a beautiful day for us to be having this conversation because it really all does tie together.
Absolutely. So let's start from the very beginning. Where were you born and what was your childhood like?
Well, I was born in a little town called Carlisle, Pennsylvania, a small town girl. And, I think I had sort of your colonial white picket fence upbringing in 1980s America, which was really fun. If you remember the 80s, and so it was a really fun time to grow up. And I think it's those times that really started to develop my interest in intuition, and I had a lot of intuitive experiences growing up. So it all kind of stemmed from those childhood years.
Amazing. And what sort of influence did your family have on your intuitive or spiritual development?
Yeah, that's a really good question because a lot of people, we have this talk about intuition. And when it happens to you, intuition can be something that people can either accept or not accept, right? So when you're talking about kids, and it's so important with kids because kids have such a great intuition and they haven't really had it beaten out of them yet. It's one of these things that it's still alive and still so connected. And when intuitive things starts to happen with children, parents can either encourage that or they can create fear and be like, oh my gosh, this is something to be afraid of, or this is crazy. And, so it's, working with intuition in my childhood it was challenging for me because I think coming from a really sort of traditional Christian background, there's not a lot of room for intuition. especially it was more, more of the Protestant. I think in the Catholic traditions, there's more of a place for it with the Holy Spirit and a lot of the mystics. But in my experiences growing up in my little world, there was not a place for intuition. And so it was something I really had to come to terms with on my own, and really facing a lot of fears and a lot of sort of judgment from the people around me. And now they get it. Like, my mom's very intuitive. She inherited from her. I think it is something that we have a genetic propensity to, but I think there's just not that level of acceptance, which in the East, which I think is so wonderful about, Eastern cultures, intuition is so much more integrated in daily life and acceptance. Right?
Yeah, that's very true. And I think, like we were discussing before this, India also is going through its own journey of realizing how abundant and vast our own heritage is, and going back to our roots, of realizing that there was so much of wisdom about intuition and the mind and the soul. And so we're going through our own journey as a country, as a civilization. But what comes to my mind is, as I learn more about how children behave, like a child always is looking at his mom or her dad or his dad for approval, right? They're always looking at so it's not so much about the words, but it's also about how the parent reacts to a certain situation or something that is happening around the world, or maybe that micro reaction that can make a huge difference, right? In terms of how the child approaches the world, even as an adult.
Absolutely. And those little foundational moments, they and this is, I talk a lot about conditioning. If you read my book or if you hear me talk today, I'm probably going to use that word a lot, because intuition is something that is really a counterbalance to this conditioning that we all get. And we get it from those very first moments with our family and with the people that we grow up with. We're conditioned to think things like, oh, intuition's not real. Or we're conditioned to think like our imagination and our creativity isn't as important as our intellectual side, right? So part of really balancing these sides of our brains and really coming into our true being is, stepping away from that conditioning and releasing it.
And that can take years, right? Because there are so many layers. But talking about you, what did you want to become as a child?
Well, the first thing I wanted to be was what every kid wanted to be. I wanted to be an archaeologist. Right? Didn't everybody want to dig up dinosaurs when you're like, no, I think like everyone I was talking to, like, oh, when I was a child, everybody just like wanted to dig up dinosaurs. That was my first love. Was I loved dinosaurs. But I was like in 4th grade. So
interesting. Yeah, me too. I also wanted to be a archaeologist, paleontologist. And there was this one time that I was at my aunt's home, and I was in the backyard, and I was like digging stuff up, and I stumbled upon a fossil, which I thought was like a proper dinosaur fossil, maybe a T-Rex, or if I'm lucky, a Triceratops.
Yeah.
But what it actually was the skull of a bull, which is still good, right?
That's still cool.
And I got it and brought it to my aunt. And coming back to my first point of, I was looking for approval, but I think my aunt just threw it away. But deep down, I still wanted to be a paleontologist or an archaeologist. And I think what I really wanted to do was to use my curiosity and find and uncover answers, which I'm in a way doing right now by asking better questions, right?
Exactly.
It's so interesting to know what a person wanted to be as a child, because sometimes there are clues there.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was thinking the same thing just before you said it. So we're on the same wavelength. It all makes you wonder if you think that was sort of our first intuitive calling to discover who we are and where we came from and the history, and all our place in the universe.
If I had an uncle who was a paleontologist or an auntie who was doing that, and I'm also in the right place because I'm in Vancouver, and in Alberta, you actually have places where you can dig up fossils. That would be pretty interesting, because I'd have my hat on, my safari suit on, and I'll be out in the open just digging fossils.
Awesome. Well, I lived in England for a while, and in northern England, and it's so interesting there because there's so many fossils. Like a friend of mine, I lived with her for a while, and she was just planting flowers in her backyard, and she's like stumbled onto Viking relics, so there's so much around, and it was so exciting to see like these little fragments and pots of Vikings that had come to Northern England and set up a whole life. And I'm Norwegian, so it also was pretty cool because it's my ancestry.
That is so amazing. I mean, I just light up whenever there's any discussion about history or even ancient history, just to know the roots of humanity and where we sort of sprang up from.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite topics is Gobekli Tepe.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you heard
of course. I watch Ancient Aliens.
yeah. But, apart from Ancient Aliens, I want to really interview somebody who is on the field and is showing people around the temples, but also has some provable, evidence-based knowledge that we can uncover. But the other side of the story is sometimes archaeologists and scientists and people, they hang on to their version of the truth, right? Because if there's some new information, then their entire career or what they believed in is at stake.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't want to let go of those things because that means like admitting we were wrong, And
nobody wants to be wrong.
Nobody wants to be wrong.
So what did you end up doing in your career? What was like your first career decision early on?
Like my first career decision or like my first job?
Your first, well, if it's different, then, you can explore. And
well, there's those jobs you get when you're in high school and those for fun. And then there's like the jobs that you love. And I think, well, my first job that I had like for a significant period of time was, I worked at a health food store. And this was back before there were really health food stores. And it was this wonderful little family run store called Rhubarb's Market in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And it was this really wonderful time to be there because, I was in college. It was my college job. And I worked there for like 5 years. And, I really got to know this sort of holistic culture, at that point in time. Like, I mean, it was so different. It was just, yoga was just like becoming a popular thing at that point. And I remember I had like chips and salsa for the first time, which was like crazy, right? Because now like all that stuff we have all the time, but it was really a different time, and learning to eat in a way that supports our body and our mind and our spirit was a really, really influenced me and really, I think, set me on this path of where I am today and created this real foundation of holistic living in my life.
That's so interesting. And I think these type of mom and pop shops or family run businesses are sort of the character that define our economy, right? And unfortunately, with what's going on right now in the pandemic, a lot of them are having to close down because it's hard to...
They closed their doors last year. So it was
there you go.
I was like 30 years or 40 years they were open, something like that. And they did.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Indeed.
So then, so you did that for the first 5 years, and then what did you do afterwards? I mean, what I'm trying to get is, how did you stumble upon the field of intuition and realize that, what, companies and organizations need this information?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And it's sort of a counterintuitive journey because, I had my whole college experience, and I went to college for oil painting. that was one of my degrees. So my degree was in oil painting. I was a double major and also writing. So the writing paid off, right? And one side, the oil painting also paid off. Though everyone was, my family was like, okay, that's a great way to go to school and be, poor for the rest of your life. And I did realize shortly after graduating that I needed to eat. And so I went sort of into the field of graphic design and went down, and learned, some high tech stuff like desktop publishing, got into the whole that, and ended up getting into graphic design, where I got a job working at the Technology Council in Pittsburgh. So my sort of gateway into this job was through art and design. But then once I was there, I started having these opportunities to work with technology companies and learn from technology companies. And what we did there was support technology companies and entrepreneurs and really help people to innovate and create new products and make money and all of the things that, are really important for the advancement of our society today. So I sort of slid in sideways into this space through the arts
Right.
and really just followed my intuition. And I kind of got this idea to start working with creative technology companies, because I noticed everybody was out there supporting like data kind of companies and information-based companies, but nobody was looking at these intuitive, creative, artistic companies. So I wanted to focus on that. And so I started some initiatives to do that. I got a huge grant from Carnegie Mellon University and a lot of other places. And we did, these research studies with University of Toronto, and, got Canada in there too. So it just all kind of snowballed into this, sort of international movement that I became part of, where I got to work with leaders all over the world and people from like the coolest tech companies. And because suddenly it became clear that this intuitive side of technology was the future, right? We know where we've been with information, IT, all that stuff, right? That's there, it's solid. But the future is in innovation and design and creating these intuitive products that people can use, right? So, when I started to sit in strategic planning meetings and hear people, really super smart people with lots of degrees talking about how important it is to find intuition, and it's this like holy grail of, innovation. Of course, my mind was like, okay, like this is, I loved intuition my whole life. So this really was all of my worlds coming together in that sort of experience. And that was really sort of what led me into this book, Radical Intuition, that just came out last week. And to create, I spent 10 years really creating this sort of understanding of intuition on a larger scale, not just as something personal, but also as something for our business and for our life in general.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, if you think about it, the role of an entrepreneur is so fascinating, almost miraculous, right? Because what they're doing essentially is they're tapping into a field that is beyond the veil and are accessing this ideas and this wisdom and these hints and these nudges, and then they're translating that, making it more physical, and then giving instructions maybe to their team. And a lot of entrepreneurs get confused because sometimes they get the why, they get the what, but then they use their logical mind to do everything by themselves with the how, right? And
Yes.
sometimes it's better to let the best of the best do the how. Your job is to go deep into the abyss of the mind and extract that useful information, and coming back to tapping into your intuition.
Absolutely. I was just working on the summit that I have coming up that is about we have all these really cool insight leaders, I'm calling, right? We talk about thought leaders, but now I'm talking about insight leaders, people who are visionary, people who are leading the way by following themselves, right? So, one of the secrets we always talk about with innovation is not keeping up with the others, not following others, not staying relevant, but by following yourself and leading the way. That is the secret sauce to creating something the world has never experienced before and the world wants from you. So intuition is that guide to that, to that new frontier that only you can get to by following your own intuition.
Interesting. So moving away from being a thought leader and moving towards being an insight leader. So what is your definition of expanding awareness?
So, oh my gosh. How long do you have?
We have a lot of time.
That's like my one of my favorite things to talk about. And in the book, I go into it a little bit. When I talk about it in terms of the 3 levels of consciousness, and this is really just as it relates to intuition, and I'm not trying to create some kind of psychological, model here for the textbooks, but just something to help people understand the levels of intuitive consciousness and this expansion of awareness, which is so important right now in our world, in our personal lives, everything. This process of becoming awake, this process of becoming conscious, right, is so crucial right now, especially in this time when we're so addicted to our information in our phones, and we're so busy and we're so caught up on this treadmill of our minds, right? So stepping back from that and moving into this intuitive space of presence and of stillness in the moment is really the secret to waking up to this higher level of consciousness. So talking about these 3 levels, basically, we have unconsciousness, which is what, honestly, a lot of us walk around in a lot of the day. Some people more than others, but sometimes we're unconscious of, how we how we affect other people. We're unconscious of, our actions in the world. We're unconscious of a lot of our feelings and our motivations, right? So there's a lot of that we're all dealing with, bringing into light. And the more we become conscious of it and aware of it, the more we wake up and naturally start to expand our consciousness and be able to really reach more level of awareness with our intuition. So the higher we raise, the higher we go up, the higher we're able to tap into these higher frequencies of intuition that really are only available in this sort of beyond mind space. So we become conscious, and then we have to become, Paramahansa Yogananda called it super conscious, right? And I love that term because a lot of people think that intuition is something from your subconscious or something that you're not aware of, but it's not. It's something from higher consciousness. It is the highest, most awakened state. When you have an intuition, even though you might not always know the rational reasons around it, it comes from a place of higher knowingness and awareness, not of something that's affecting us from beneath and in an unconscious way. So I could go on about that for hours, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's really, really exciting. And thanks for sharing this. We go from unconscious to conscious to super conscious. And it sort of makes sense also if you look at the brain waves. We're normally in beta, then we go to alpha, then theta, delta. But then the super conscious is the gamma. It's like higher frequency when we have this epiphany and this realization and able to connect with a different stream of consciousness, I guess.
Absolutely.
Right. And so what is then your definition of transcendence? Because you write about transcendence also, right?
So I think transcendence, and there's sort of a whole sort of manifestation of intuition that connects us with that. And, Yogananda also said that intuition is the soul's power of knowing God. And, whatever word you use for God, it doesn't matter, because intuition is all religions, all philosophies, everything. It's just we use different words for it. So whatever word you use to connect to the universe or the source or the supreme of human existence, your intuition is your connection to that. And when we understand that intuition is a pipeline to the highest wisdom, the highest knowledge, and really all of it geared to our own personal highest benefit, because the universe wants us to grow and expand. Our consciousness is expanding like the universe is expanding. The universe wants us to grow and evolve and change and transform into something more. We're not here to just sit and be. The presence is important. Presence is a counterpoint to the distractions of the mind that we need. But if we're here, most of us still have things to do. We have ways to help and try and fix this world.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It seems like our consciousness and our need to self-realize and access this super consciousness is almost like a gift. And maybe it seems like a conspiracy, but maybe there are some neuroscientists who are working day and night to capture our consciousness and hook us onto our devices. Right?
Yeah, like Westworld.
Yeah,
right?
It feels as if there's this battle of consciousness where intuitively we have this yearning, this desire to learn who we truly are and why we're here on this earth, and to access these higher states of being. And yet we can almost control it. We're hooked onto this notification brigade of dopamine hits that make us feel good immediately, but in the long run, it's not really good for us.
Yeah, it's a substitute, really. And I think that's a sign of becoming conscious, because when we're unconscious, a lot of times we don't have that desire, right?
No.
We've all met unconscious people who don't have any desire to know anything about the meaning of life, and they don't care about anything we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
It's just not resonating with them. And that's just because they're in a different place. But once you start to wake up to the realities around you, you can't help but get a thirst to understand it, because you realize there's so much wonder in the world. There's so much we just experience this little bit of reality, and there's so much more beyond. And we start to realize that it's exciting, and it gets you fired up because you want to learn more and understand more about this world we're living in.
Right. It's an exciting place to be in. It feels like we're still trapped, but we know where we need to go.
Exactly. We're still trapped. Right. And there really is something to that, and I feel like that a lot of times, because I feel like our intuition is sort of our way out. Our intuition is like telling us, this is how you get out of this place.
Exactly.
Follow me, I'll get you out of here, right?
Right. Right. But in the beginning, it's a still small voice, right? It's just a
It is.
whisper until it gets louder and louder, and you can't help but follow it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's always there. And that's what a lot of us don't realize. Everybody has it. And it's always there for all of us, kind of trying to reach down and get our attention and bring us onto the right path. But most of the time, we're either just too busy or we're just not paying attention. We don't hear it. Or sometimes we hear it, we don't want to listen to what it has to say because it wants us to do something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons why we don't follow our intuition, but it's always there just waiting for us to listen.
Very true. And if we have a conversation or we go outdoors and we interview people on the road and ask them about the different types of intuition, I'm sure we'll have different definitions and different perspectives, right? So what are some of the different types of intuitions that we can potentially tap into?
Yeah, so that was one of the things when I was writing the book, I realized, as I was talking to people about intuition over the years, and I do that a lot because I wanted to gather ideas and I wanted to see what other people thought. And I realized there was just no unified definition. Everybody had a different idea of what intuition was. Some people were saying it's a gut feeling. Some people was like, oh, I just had this knowing. Other people are like this psychic experience or this sensations in my body. And so people just didn't really know what to think of intuition. And that's part of the reason why it's been so misunderstood. It's because it has so many manifestations. So I talk about in the book the 4 intuitions. And really they're just 4 different aspects of the one universal intuition, that one inner voice and guide. But it speaks to us in these 4 primary ways. So it's really 4 different ways to understand your intuition. And that's through your body, mind, heart, and spirit. It's very simple. The same 4 cognitive functions that we use to process information from our reality outside of us, we use to process information from our inner reality. So your intuition can speak to you through feelings, through gut sensations, through knowings, through epiphanies, through inspiration, through creative ideas, through passion, through being moved to do things, or even falling in love. That whole kind of movement feeling is connected to intuitive callings. And then ultimately, like we touched on a little bit earlier, is this transcendent sort of force and drive that intuition calls us to rise up and take to the next level of life and go beyond this world and escape.
Interesting. So there are different ways in which we can access intuition through our body, mind, heart, or even spirit. What is a metasensory reality that you write about? And what role does that play in our life?
Yeah, so the meta senses, when I wrote my first book, The Psychic Workshop, that came out 15 years ago. And I wanted to help people to understand how intuition spoke through our senses. So I referred to them as meta senses or higher senses, because metaphysics beyond. So it's basically when you have feelings in your body when there's no rational explanation for it other than it's your intuition. So for example, if something is spooking you or there's something going on that's not right in your life, you're having an intuitive experience, you might get the chills, right? It's not like you're cold, you're not reacting to your outer environment, but your intuition is causing this effect, right? So, or even you'll hear people hear a voice in their head, like, oh my gosh, I swear I heard this voice say, get off the street right before a car ran me over, or ran by, and it intuition saved their life, but they swear they'll hear a voice, but there was nobody around. Right. So that's a meta sense, right? So it happens to us, but it's in our senses, it's in our hearing, but it's not from out there, it's from in there.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. And Action Tribe, if you are watching this as a video, or maybe you're listening to this as a podcast, if you have ever had that inner voice tell you to do something or not do something before you did it, and that turned out to be really useful for you, let us know. Maybe you can comment or maybe just email me and let me know, have you ever had that sense, that voice within, and you're maybe starting to trust that even more? Let us know. Now, Kim, you also talk about something called an intuition diary, right? So why should one maintain one, and how do you maintain it? What do you write into it?
Yes. Well, the most important thing is to have a journal or a diary when you're working with your intuition for one reason and one reason alone: validation. So you can't learn to trust your intuition. No, you can't follow your intuition until you trust your intuition. Okay. So that's the most important thing with these journals. And the thing about intuition is you don't always figure it out right away. Right. So, sometimes it takes, hindsight. It takes a month. It takes a year. even 10 years sometimes, to really understand some of these things that are coming through. We can follow it, but we might think we were totally wrong and then look back on it in the future and be like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe that I knew that, or I can't believe that I wrote that.
Right.
So having this journal, writing down your intuitive experiences anytime they come, especially when you start to work with your intuition, you're going to have more of them. And once you focus on them, once you start to do some of the practices that we do in the book, you're going to get intuitive stuff all the time. So just keeping a journal and writing that stuff down, and then going back every couple of weeks or months and rereading it, you will be so shocked at how spot on your intuition was that you didn't even realize it at the time, right? Because you didn't have that information. And sometimes you don't get it till later. So so it's so important in really building trust in your own intuitive process.
Yeah, that's really, really useful. And I'm sure people listening or watching right now see benefit in maintaining a diary or a journal for intuition. Because I'll tell you, in my life, I've learned to trust my own intuition even more. And it started a few weeks back, actually, this particular trail that I'm on, where there was this idea that was planted in my mind about interdimensional travel.
Mm.
And so I posted it on somebody that I know. I commented. That person told me about some of the declassified documents of the CIA. So I went down that rabbit hole, learned more about some of the experiments that they've been conducting about remote viewing and astral projection. And I read about the Monroe Institute, listened to some of their files and their brainwave audio. And then I went deeper into that, learning about astral projection, because it seems like the universe wants me to learn more about astral projection and perhaps have these wonderful out-of-body experiences. And you won't believe it. So, and last night I had a pretty lucid dream. And in the morning when I woke up, there was a comment by somebody who listened to an episode that I did years back. This was episode 83. And right now we're in episode 385. What are the chances that somebody randomly posted a comment on an episode I did about astral projections, and they wrote down, "You guys need to have more downloads. This is awesome."
Oh my gosh, that is so, and I talk about that in the book, that kind of synchronicity and that stuff happening, that is totally like a God wink, whatever word you want to use. That's like, yes, that's like that punctuation mark from the universe, yes. Yeah. That's awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah. So my question then is, what role does our brain play, our physical brain, what role does it play in us being able to access this intuition or connect with this intuition?
So the physical brain, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not even going to pretend to that's not my wheelhouse. Okay. So, but in terms of just understanding things like a regular human, I really feel like, we have two sides of our brain for a reason. We have an intellectual side and we have an intuitive side. We have a creative, artistic side. We have a linear, sort of rational side. And these two sides need to be in balance, right? They need to work together, right? And that's part of the yin and the yang, right? It's all of that connectedness and that duality and that we experience in this world. So the problem with our brains is that we have only really focused on developing one side of them. And it's so we're all go to school, we're taught to be smart, we learn formulas, and then our other side of the brain, the kind of artsy side of the brain, the imaginative side of the brain, more often than not, is kind of like, okay, well, that's nice. You can have a couple music or art classes, or you can, have some extracurricular activities, but, it's just sort of bonus, right? But now we start to realize, no, it's not bonus. It's essential. It's not, it is what makes us extraordinary. So you see these extraordinary people like Einstein and Steve Jobs, who are the huge advocates for intuition, right? So they have these two sides of their brains, both of them working, and that is the secret sauce for genius and extraordinary living.
Very, very true. Have you heard of ambidexterity dance? That's really fascinating. So one of the things I do in my breathwork classes is before we start the breathwork, we do something called ambidexterity dance. And as the name suggests, it's sort of the idea behind that is to do certain dance moves where you're touching one part of the body to the other, training your brain to create new neural pathways and connect one hemisphere with the other, so that you're not just left brain dominant or just not right brain dominant, but you're also having fun in the dance and shaking. But it's fascinating. The same point of what you're saying is that true genius is unlocked when you're able to integrate both hemispheres of the brain, right? Not just
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea because you're even like using different practices like malas, and there's different ways that you can actually enhance this neuroplasticity between these two sides of your brain. So I'd love to learn more about that too, and just ways to just open up those connections.
So talk to us about malas, because I know you write about malas. How does that help us, stimulate our brain or access our ambidextrousness, or tell us more?
Yeah, so I mean, I look at the mala as a piece of technology in a lot of ways. Like, it's very simple. It's one of the oldest pieces of technology that we've had,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you know all about it. And very often it's been a spiritual tool to help us to reconnect, and you can use it in a lot of different ways. And for me, it's very helpful in this sort of reprogramming of our minds when we're in a space where we're overthinking and we need to slow down and make space, or we need to sort of reprogram a sort of uplifting vibration into our consciousness when we've gotten lower, right? So these things, using these and creating a mantra or creating an affirmation and repeating them 108 times, that's supposed to be the magic number, right? You say it over and over again, and then something clicks, and then you create that sort of neuroplasticity or that shift. You can feel that shift actually when you're done. You're like, wow, I actually feel better, right? Because I've been programming and injecting this positive energy into my being.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so fascinating that our ancient elders had these devices, and these days we talk about biohacking. But in
Mhm.
ancient India, yantra literally means device or machine, right? And so,
Really?
yeah, yantra literally means like a device, and I guess mala is one of the devices that
Yeah.
helps us, biohack
It's
our
that, it is.
our
That's really
neurosystem.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Cool,
I did
cool.
not know
Yeah. And so you say the moments when you feel truly alive are the moments you are living with your whole heart.
that.
You are
Mhm.
all in, you're on fire with the passion for something that ignites your spirit. So, how does somebody unlock this state or access this state where they are on fire and passionate about something that really ignites their spirit? And what does that do for you?
Yeah. So passion is so important, and we think of passion so often in terms of human passion, being in love, but that feeling, that consummate calling and obsession with something can also be transferred into something that's really meant to transform us and
Mm.
to change us, and then the world that we touch. So to tap into our callings and to tap into this passion within us, we really need to understand our purpose and
Mm.
who we are. So that's why it's so important with our intuition, because once we get a little bit of who we are and what we can do in this world and what we're sort of made, design, program, whatever word you want to use, to
Mm.
go out into this world and do, it makes us come alive. Whatever way, whether you want to teach people, or whether you want to, like somehow support people in through business or through just children or whatever, anything that you're called to, that calling is the
Mhm.
universe showing you your unique path and purpose. And by opening up the gates of intuition, you can get more of that and more guidance and get on the path of your true self instead of trying to be other people or taking false paths.
Yeah, and I think that the phase that we're in right now, this pandemic, for one reason or the other, is encouraging people to maybe think about their calling, right? Maybe something that they put on the back burner for all these years now, maybe is an opportune moment to explore more into it and listen to their gut intuition. But sometimes when they think about it, they have this fear or
Mhm.
fears
Mhm.
that arise, right? So what is your process with dealing with those fears or processing those fears, whatever they might be?
Well, first of all, it's a good thing that when you're in that space, because that means when you have that little moment of fear, when you have that little feeling of getting outside your comfort zone, that means you're growing. That is the call to become something more. And we all have that. And sometimes we resist it because it's safer to stay where we are, or because we're afraid that we'll fail, or we're afraid that we'll succeed. There's so much psychology wrapped around that, but
Yeah.
ultimately that fear is an indicator that we're going to try something new. right? And like, when I started doing all the work that I was doing in tech, like, I had no idea what I was doing. Talk about imposter syndrome. You're like, how can I do this? I don't have a PhD in like technology. I don't know anything about this, right? But you got to go with your gut. You got to follow your intuition because it's still a step above all of that. And that is one thing I have learned, working with the people that I have, that intuition trumps everything. You can go to school, you can have 18,000 degrees, but if you don't have intuition, something's going to be missing, and if you do have that intuition and that genius, then that can trump all of those other things. So ideally we want to have both. Ultimately we want to be really smart and really intuitive, but that calling comes to really take us up into that better place.
Yeah. I don't know. This is funny, but what came to my mind is intuition trumps everything, but so far it has been for Biden.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That just come to your head because that's actually really good.
That's good, right?
That's really good. Like, because you're kind of saying for Biden, like forbidden a little, like, is that what kind of we're thinking? Because
yeah, exactly.
It has been like it actually works, right? Because I always say that's one of the big like things is like why it's the great mysteries of the universe that how the world has taught us that intuition doesn't exist. We've been conditioned to think it's not real and it doesn't exist, and it's the most important thing.
Yeah, I should maybe try up stand-up comedy sometime. But
that was really
I don't know if there was a good joke or a bad joke, but it was a joke. Moving on, let's talk about the dark night of the soul, because right now we're, coming back to the present situation. It's not easy for a lot of people because there's a lot of change. And like we discussed earlier, these wonderful businesses that have been there for so many years are forced to be closed, and people are losing their jobs and also losing their partners because of one reason or the other. Right, so they're experiencing challenges of all kinds, and this experience leaves a painful memory in a lot of cases. And no matter how much we try to forget, maybe in 2021, 2022, we try to forget, right, what happened in 2020. It always hurts. So how does one go about processing or even letting go of a painful past?
Whew. Well, I feel like there's two questions in there because one thing is, dealing with what we're dealing with right now, and getting through that. First, I just want to say that, this is a really hard time for a lot of people, and I want to acknowledge that. And I think this is something that none of us ever expected in our life, to have to deal with something like this, and especially because of the subtleties of it. Because it's like we're all thinking the world was going to end in 1999 and then like 2012, but we weren't expecting it to have this kind of world-ending thing where it's like horrible, but also we're just stuck in our houses washing our food, and it's just strange. So it's this really strange limbo that we're in, and I think that what we need to understand, and also in terms of the politics that's happening right now, is that we're going through growing pains, and everything that's happening right now, whether it's through the politics or what the earth is telling us, this pandemic is a message for us to slow down, right? The silver lining, how many people have we heard saying that, wow, the silver lining to this is, oh, I do get more time with my family. Oh, I have some downtime. Oh, I have more time for myself, right? Because I'm not spending 3 hours commuting to work every day. And, my work day just got shorter. And so there is a silver lining that, we're getting this kind of time out from the earth. Mother Nature's giving us a timeout. So maybe, we can use the opportunity to the best of our ability to try and, like you said earlier, is maybe use this as a launching pad for something new, an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to shift gears, and really listen to what life is telling us right now, because all of this is meaningful. It's meaningful in our evolution. And these are the kind of growing pains that it might hurt now, but it's happening for a reason. And when we look back on 2020, we're going to remember all of these, horrible things that people have been going through, but we're also going to see, hopefully, that some change came out of it, some change that has made the world better, especially, hopefully in the social justice department is one area that, we're really starting to see some change, and hopefully we'll see that momentum growing. So all of it's part of this, what I call an intuition revolution. It's all part of this revolution that's happening right now to kind of move us out of unconsciousness, the unconsciousness we've all been living in, and wake us up to, what life's really about.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think maybe right now is a good time for people to really take stock of where they are in life and what is their visions or goals or dreams, no matter how difficult it might seem. But also note down and journal what their body is trying to tell them, what the universe is trying to tell them, what people come into their lives, and what the universe is trying to tell them through these interactions that they're having, which might not seem logical, but more intuitive.
Exactly. Exactly.
Got it. Um, yeah, and yeah, like I said, it's a crazy time. I personally am coming across different, uh, or maybe remembering, because I told you last time I have interviewed people in the past about astral projection, but
Mm,
also maybe revisiting a particular concept or a practice once again in my own life. What are your thoughts on astral projection
I
and
was hoping
lucid
you were
dreaming?
gonna ask me that. um, I I I just want to say that astral projection, or whatever term we want to use for experiences of our consciousness outside of the place of our body, right, of our
Mhm.
physical body.
Yeah.
um, for me was really intrinsically tied into my awakening process. I have had a couple of experiences like that throughout my life. I was interested in it when I was young, and I was like, oh, it's so fascinating, but I never really understood what it was. And the times that I had those moments, um, they happened completely unexpectedly to me, and in a sleep state. But almost a little like lucid dreaming, also very much tied in. All of it is tied in. When you start to awaken, you're going to have more of those things happen, because um, I think from my experience, it's because you're raising that vibration, you're raising your awareness, and that is allowing this expansion of consciousness that goes out into places beyond just here in this little space, right? And I know 100% it's real because I've experienced it. But the really interesting thing to me, and I'd be curious to talk to you, is see what your experiences are. But the thing for me that I noticed is when they happened, it always happened to me on days when I was having a really good day. Or
Mm.
I went to bed like feeling either really happy or just had a great day. I was just in a great energy space.
Yeah.
And and I didn't realize it at first until I noticed the pattern. I was like, wow, I'm like, this happens when I'm feeling really good,
Yeah.
because it's about this vibrational thing, right?
Right.
The one time, the most important time it happened to me, I remember laying there literally having to hold myself in. I would
Yeah.
literally I was just like, I was just going free. Like I was just going free. And I was like, no, I just have to stay here. Just gotta
Yeah.
stay, gotta stay. So,
Yeah.
but it was tied in to that joy and that bliss of really experiencing another level of reality.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And, based on what I've come across, astral projections and out of body experiences happen when we're in a heightened state of emotion. And that could be positive,
Mhm,
that could be negative also, like sorrow or
mhm,
trauma or fear,
mhm,
where we're so scared of our own physical body that we want to leave the body.
mhm,
And so that could be astral projections. That could be, like in my case, when I had a road accident, when I was literally, you know, jolted away from my physical body. I did not have a specific astral projection, but I do recall objectively being detached
mhm.
from my body. I
Perceiving the
remember
world from like a different
from a different
perspective.
vantage point.
Right, yeah,
Exactly.
from a different vantage
Yeah.
point. That's how it was with me. I was like, the first time it happened, I was looking at, I just remember I was looking at a Monet poster. It's funny because I'm an artist. Strangely, I was in Toronto actually at a friend's house
Right.
in Canada, and I was looking at a Monet poster on my friend's sister's wall, and I thought, wow, this is so beautiful. And then I had this thought, I'm like, her poster was in the ceiling.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't
Okay.
have reached it if I was standing up. And
Yeah.
and that's when I realized, oh my gosh, something's going on here. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's that feeling like, yeah, I was here and I couldn't have seen this from this perspective in any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. That I mean, I think astral projection holds is um, very promising for people who have lost loved ones, to realize that we're not just these physical bodies, that we are, eternal, and we're beings of light. And just because a person dies physically, it does not mean that they have died eternally. So that's one. But also for somebody who is on their spiritual journey and wanting to let go of this need to associate with just this physical self, although the physical self is important, nutrition is important, exercise is important, but not attaching too much to this physical body. That helps as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really think what you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, especially for me, and my experience was, I suddenly realized it was a huge validation for me, right?
Yeah,
It was a
exactly.
validation that, yeah, okay, there's more to life. I am not just this body. I'm something
Mm.
else, right? I'm something else. So it was this huge validation. And yeah, and this meaningful nature of life, that life goes on beyond the body, and that there's a whole other kind of thing out there. And then once this happened to me, that was the first time it was kind of, whatever. But after the second time, then I started to be able actually to see things, even when I was awake in my body, that were there around that I couldn't have seen before. So that was super trippy. That was when I started to think I was going crazy. But I worked it out eventually. But it was a little scary at first. But you can change your level of perception, and having those kind of experiences, and when it happens in a lower state, when it happens out of a state of fear and a state of of negative feelings, it can also create this awakening. Like Eckhart Tolle talked a lot about, his awakening came from like so much suffering, and he wanted to die, and he just went to this extreme, and it broke through. So it can happen either way.
It's very, very true. And my question is, what are your thoughts on different dimensions? Because there are so many perspectives to this, right? Some people say that there's no past, there's no future, but the past and future are happening right now. Some people say that we have parallel realities, like an Aditya who became a paleontologist based on certain decisions that I've taken, and that sort of creates an inflection point in two potentialities, one happening in a different reality, the other happening right now. What are your thoughts on different realities?
Yeah, I think about this sometimes, and I go back and forth. I mean, I'm intrigued. I'm just gonna say I'm intrigued by this the multiverse. I'm intrigued by the potentiality, and I wonder, if there isn't just sort of, all of this different potential and all these different outcomes, and we're just kind of, with our free will, choosing which life that we're going to create from our own journey and our own experience. And, maybe there's an infinite number of other Kim Chestneys out there, and I'm just this one, and this is the one I'm making. And, we all are creating our own unique lives. And, but it really does, it really does make you want to think. And, I talked with Jesse Schell and the summit that I was talking about earlier, that we have, the Intuition Revolution Summit, that you can sign up for now on my website. And he was on with Morgan Freeman and Through the Wormhole, because he's a game designer. And, the whole episode was on whether reality was a simulation.
Right.
And to me, this really is where I think something that resonates is that we're realizing that in a lot of the ways that reality is like a simulation. And there was some article that came out like a couple weeks ago. It's like 50% of scientists now agree that like reality is a simulation or something. So I was like, what? So it's really interesting that this idea is becoming more and more mainstream, that, and if it's a simulation, how do multiverses play into that? Right. So it's kind of like,
that's totally factual. I mean, I totally resonate with what you're saying. And if somebody, it speaks to people who listen to this podcast as well, right? It's only that they understand these concepts that they even listen to it even more. Otherwise, they'll just tune off and listen to some other podcast. And it's true, a lot of people are realizing that maybe this is a simulation. And even if you look at our cells at an atomic level, we're 99.99% space, right? And the example that I like to draw is, if you go to Las Vegas, and there are so many big fountains, right? And if you look at the fountain for like 1 kilometer away, it almost seems as if it's still. It's just this shape. But if you actually go closer, you'll realize that it's not still. It's water that's, going up and down. And there are different particles of water droplets that are actually making this journey up and down. right? So it's just this perspective shift that
It
you
is.
have
It's all
as you get
relative,
closer. It's all
right?
relative.
Yeah, I remember when I was in my first like physics class in college, and they're just like, all of your cells are really empty space, you know, and
Yeah.
you're like, what? How is that possible?
Yeah, it's so intriguing. I mean, so you write about these three concepts: serendipity, synchronicity, and coincidences, right, in your book. So what are the differences among them, and maybe if you can talk a bit about that.
Well, they're all like a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. So, I think all of them are different. They're all together are different sort of manifestations of our relationship with our intuition and our intuition manifesting in the world. So, for instance, one of the things you hear people talk a lot about are like angel numbers, or, people will look at the clock and it'll be like 11:11 every day, right? They see it. Well, why do you think you're looking at the clock at 11:11 every day?
Mm.
Because your intuition drew your attention to it,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
so intuition is all about attention, and that's a validation, and it does that to show you that there's a validation there, that hey, intuition, I'm here, I exist, don't forget about me. And yeah, the world is meaningful. Yes, there's more to life than we realize, right? All of those little endorsements that our intuition gives us. So intuition's all about attention, and it'll use our attention to draw us to these experiences that give us these little validations and messages, right? So you might just be like looking for a sign, right? And then you'll see like something written on a bumper sticker that was like right what you were thinking, right? So
Yeah.
your intuition draws you to that. So you have that experience. So that's one way.
Mm.
But this other way is kind of like what you talked about earlier. And I've been experiencing it a lot, actually, this past couple of weeks, twice. It was really crazy, is when those unexplained coincidences happen. Like you'll be thinking of something and then it shows somebody comments on that thing of your astral projection on your podcast, right? So, that's sort of in this synchronicity, and this law of attraction plays a little bit of a role in there. But what on a bigger level, what's happening is our interconnectedness, right? And then how we're all connected. And then some level, that person had a connectedness to your thoughts and your intentions because he or she was plugged in to your energy through your work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I've had this happen twice in this month. The first time, I just was thinking about an old friend, and I used to manage a record store before I worked at the health food store. I forgot about that. And named Brian, and I didn't even know him that well. He was just an acquaintance, and I thought, I wonder what happened to old Brian. Like, didn't he send me a Facebook friend request the next morning?
Right.
I kid you not, I was dying. I was just like, I hadn't thought about you in 30 years, and I actually even had the thought the day before. I thought I should look for him on Facebook, and then it was crazy, and he sent me a Facebook. And it happened to me on another friend that I hadn't talked to in about a year. I thought I should call them up, and they sent me an email the next day saying, let's have lunch. So those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are ways that we're connected intuitively, right? Those sort of telepathic strings that unite us, even if we don't necessarily have close personal connections with people. There has to be some sort of energetic connection, but it can work. It's not just with the people we love. It's not just with our partners or our kids and our families. It's with anybody that we're energetically connected to.
Yeah, that is really, really awesome that you say that, because I mean, the metaphor that I like to draw is when I was a kid, and the way children play in playgrounds is, people decide, do you want to play? And so people get together. Okay, you want to play a game? Let's decide. And then we select teams, right?
Yeah.
And it feels as if the universe wants to express itself, but, the universe wants to get to know itself. And in doing so, it's recruiting people for this game that we are playing. And depending on who wants to play this game, people express their intention. So there's a calling, there's a seeking that happens, and then there's a confirming that also happens, right? So and you write about this in your book also. There's a seeking where you send out intentions, and only those people who have sent the intention, like your friend, maybe Brian, wanted to partake in this game that you were wanting to play, and through some synchronicity, some connection, he tapped into this information. So
exactly. And it wasn't even anything that was profoundly spiritual. Like I didn't need to reconnect with him like for anything. We just said hi, and wow, that was really crazy. And now we're friends on Facebook. That's it, right? It was actually the act of having that synchronicity happen that was important, right? And it's
Yeah.
that little reminder for each of us that, wow, life is more meaningful than we remember, right? Just a reminder that everybody is connected and that thoughts matter, right? That's the
Yeah.
other thing. I'm thinking about this and he wants to play the game because he's connecting his thought. Well, how do all of our other thoughts affect people, right? How do
Oh,
our
yeah.
negative thoughts affect people? And like, how are other people's negative thoughts affecting us? So when you start really getting into the harmonics and how all these different energy frequencies really interact with us, then there's a lot to unpack there.
Oh, absolutely. I was just listening to a podcast where there was somebody who is an expert at sound healing, was talking about how our thoughts create a certain vibration. And although it's not audible to the human ear, it's still a vibration, it's still a sound. And it's as if our cells are singing a song.
Wow,
Because if
that's
you
cool.
amplify that vibration, you can actually hear a tune.
I
And so
love
I'm fascinated to see what song my cells are singing, or if they're even singing a song. So let's say if I'm ill or if I have a disease, then it goes out of tune, right? And that's where I guess
it.
all this entrainment comes into play, where you're able to remind yourselves of singing the right note instead of singing the wrong note.
I love that. And I think that also plays into like those first impressions and when you vibe with people or don't fight, like your songs don't go together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like your song's not jiving with my song. And yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So, speaking about song, you write in your book, or you sort of allude to the fact that all of us are here to sing a particular song, right?
Mhm.
Or in other words, have this intuitive calling. And you write that an intuitive calling is something that you have to listen to. Life itself is a faithful listening to intuition, to the something else that calls us forward. Sometimes this can be challenging because we don't always know what we've been called to. There's a lot of mystery at play, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's risky, as a lot of people might agree, but we have to be faithful even when we don't know the outcomes. So, why is it important, firstly, to follow your intuitive calling?
Because your intuition knows everything. So that's the thing that when I came to that understanding, like even when I was a kid and I would play with like tarot cards and stuff, I'd be like, how do these work? I was
Hmm.
trying to wrap my brain around it. Like, because everybody was telling me it was like the devil, I was
Mhm.
like, is the devil here? Is this what the devil doing these cards with me? Because it doesn't feel like the devil's here. It seems like kind of lame if this is what the devil's doing, but I had to figure out how it worked. And, I remember when it finally occurred to me, when I really kind of had this epiphany as to what intuition actually was and how like
Right.
all along it was that all-knowing part of myself. So intuition has access to all the data in the universe. Every single little bit of everything that's ever happened is happening and will happen. Your intuition can connect with that. So understanding that it naturally has a higher perspective and a higher vision than us in our little places, in our small little world that can just see with our five senses and like our rational minds. Which one can see further? It's like, you're going down, a river, or say you're using your GPS, right? You're driving down the street and you're trying to decide how to get somewhere. Well, your GPS can see what's ahead. It can see the whole map out ahead of you, but you
Yeah.
can just see the road, right? So it's like, they always call intuition your inner GPS because it's a good metaphor, right? But it's kind of like that. Your intuition can see so far out ahead. We want to rely on what has the greatest expansive vision.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you said that your intuition has the whole perspective, a lot of factors or data points, data sets that we might not even be considering. It has that information. And if it's telling you that this is what your calling is, then maybe you need to listen to it. So sometimes, though, our intuition might get polluted, right? Or
Yes.
might get muddled or fuzzy. So, what are some factors that sort of affect our intuitive clarity?
So people always ask me like, well, what happens when my intuition's wrong? And I said, well, your intuition's never wrong. We're wrong. We get confused. We didn't get the message right. Something was lost in translation. But intuition is truth. So intuition will never be wrong. So our job is to get it right and to understand what it's actually saying. So there's a lot of things that can kind of muddy that signal.
Right.
One of those things is extreme emotions, right? So if we're really fearful, or we have like a desire for something, we really want something, anything really ego-based, right? So anything that's for us, that we think with our rational minds is for us, is going to stand in the way of intuitive truth. Because when we surrender to our intuition, we become faithful to that intuitive calling. That means trusting in something else other than ourselves, right? So it's putting that ego aside. It's trusting in something beyond ourselves. So the ego doesn't like that. The ego is not going to be cool with that. It's going to try and talk you out of it. Your mind's going to be like, no, that's crazy. You're definitely going to fail. Don't do that. So it's all of this process of developing this trust and getting into, like you said earlier, that space of stillness, that still, calm, quiet voice, because that's when you know it's your intuition. Even if your intuition is telling you to do the most insane thing that is so emotional, like, there's stories of a mother that's had to like go and rescue a kid that fell out back, and she had no way of knowing. But even if she's dealing in such an emotional situation, if you talk with her, she'll tell you there was just a knowing inside. There was just like a calm, I'm going to go do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this. There's an emotion, I'm being moved, but I'm not like freaking out and having a mental breakdown about it. I'm going and I'm doing it, right? So when we're moved with our intuition, it's an abiding sense. It's an abiding feeling. It's abiding knowing that calls us or gives us information. Right. So one of the things about intuition is it doesn't change. It holds. It's there. It's still. It's not like if you have an intuition and you think something else 10 seconds later, well, it probably wasn't your intuition, because intuition is stillness and it remains. And you have to have it in a calm state of mind, because all of those emotions are kryptonite for intuition and really will interfere with that signal coming through.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because sometimes I feel people's emotions get in the way of them actually making a good decision, or actually even having a intuitive based dialogue or discussion
Yeah.
with people. Sometimes it can get pretty heaty, right? And prevent all parties from coming to a higher understanding of the topic at hand.
Yeah. If everybody was working on their intuitive level, then you can make some really cool intuitive breakthroughs, but if we're not in that state, if we're conversing from that place of fear, or the place of judgment, or the place of mind, really, because intuition comes from that place of no mind, of beyond mind. When we're in that state of mind, then it's us and them, right?
Yeah.
It's the unity that really is embodied by intuition.
Interesting. And you spoke about the concept of surrender, which is my favorite topics. But what does surrendering do for you? But also, what does it do for somebody who's trying to access their intuition?
Yeah. So really, surrendering is, for me, in my own journey, was so crucial, because, as someone who just wanted to have control in their life, I'm a Scorpio. I like environments of control, so it was really important when I made that shift to realizing that I don't know everything. There's a part of me that's above right here that knows better of what I'm meant for, that knows better of what I'm capable of. And I'm going to trust in that. I'm going to trust in that higher part. I'm going to trust that I'm okay. And I'm going to trust that the universe is working for my benefit. And that's huge. That trust that the universe is working for your benefit is huge. And because, half the time we're not sure, because, life is kind of rough sometimes, right? So it doesn't feel like the universe is always working for our benefit. But knowing that even though we're failing forward, or we're experiencing that tough love from the universe, like we're doing right now in the world, that it's ultimately for our benefit, even if we can't see what it is right now. So surrendering to that to life, and saying, I trust life. I'm going to not resist life, right? Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about, resist nothing. Resistance is the source of our suffering. But really surrendering to the flow of life and acceptance is such a powerful shift.
Yeah, surrendering does a lot for me as well, because surrendering in a way allows you to let go of your own ego or your logical thinking, and allows the universe to conspire on your behalf, bringing together people and opportunities and things and experiences your way for the greater good. And sometimes you might feel that's not the greater good for me. But then if you have faith and patience, you realize what that actually was good for you, even better for you, than the thing that you had in mind initially.
Exactly.
Interesting. So sometimes when somebody has this intuitive calling, right, and they feel this jolt of excitement, and maybe they surrender, but they still have this limiting belief within themselves. I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful enough.
Mhm.
Worldviews, right, that we've developed over the years, it seem to be holding us back. Any advice for somebody, especially a visionary, right? And a lot of our listeners are visionaries, who
Mhm.
want to create something new in their life, and they've got responsibilities as well, right? Maybe if they're a mom or a dad,
Mhm.
maybe if they're a son or a daughter, they've got responsibilities to act like a, a good person or a
Right.
responsible person.
Right.
So how do we think through this? So you got your limiting beliefs, you got your responsibilities, but at the same time, you've got this yearning, this calling that is for you. And if you don't do it, you lose out on this magical moment that has been waiting for you to take some inspired action.
Well, that's a great question. And I can say that I was in that position and for a lot of my life, so I can relate to it. And I can share from my experience. My advice, first of all, would be to try to embrace a sense of, first of all, acceptance of where you are.
Mhm.
Because it can be very frustrating if you have a calling and a dream and you don't feel like that you're in the position to be making that happen at that moment, right? So that can be frustrating, but understanding that, it's very possible that where you are, you're learning crucial things that you're going to be using someday for that dream. So we have to begin with, get out of this idea of instant gratification. We have callings, but we don't always, they doesn't mean we always have to run right out and do them right this second. It might be that calling's not going to come into fruition for a few years or for the next phase of our life. And what we're doing right now is establishing a foundation for us to go out and make that happen. So I would say, follow the cues from life in the universe and keep stepping forward from where you are. If a door opens for you and it's the time to take it, don't be afraid to take it. If a door
Yeah.
opens, it's a sign something's come for you, right? So open your mind and your heart to new opportunities to grow. But at the same time, if those opportunities don't grow and life's taking you over here, well, there's probably a reason why life's taking you over there, right? There's probably a lesson to be learned over there, and you've got to learn that lesson before you get back over here, right? And in my own
Mhm.
journey, there were things I had to learn before I could do this work and this calling that I knew for my whole life that I had to do. This book has been inside me for 10 years, right? So sometimes it might take 10 years to get to that moment, but then you'll look back and you'll be like, every step of that way, I learned something that I needed right now. I didn't know it at the time, and I wasted energy being grumpy about it or feeling resistant about it. It's just a waste of your energy. Just go with life and follow the opportunities and the open doors and keep your mind open for what's next. It'll come when the time's right.
Yeah, that's very profound because a lot of people look at successful people and they say overnight success, but they don't realize that that person has been putting out YouTube videos or writing blogs
Mhm.
or, experiencing small failure to small failure and
Failing forward.
then failing forward and being in a state of receptance. And then finally that opportunity arrives. So, speaking about that same door, right? You said that sometimes life presents us a door and we have the
Mhm.
option to either open it or not, or, wait. What do you say to that person who has followed their calling, but is having a hard time seeing success in their field? Like,
Oh,
they took a hard decision to follow the uncharted path. They felt it might work at that point, but now they begin to have doubts. Maybe I should have, done what my colleagues X or Y or my peers were doing, and maybe I would have been happy.
I love that question because just because we're following a calling doesn't mean it's always going to turn out the way we expect it to. And right, we have
Right.
to remember that. Like just because we have a calling to do this thing doesn't
Yeah.
mean that, I have a calling to start this business because I'm going to be a multimillionaire, right? You
Hmm.
might have a calling to start a business because that business is going to lead you to make a connection with a certain person, or because that business is going to teach you something about yourself, or maybe it's even a new opportunity to fail forward to the following business after that, right? So we don't know, and it gets back to that same old thing with that GPS. We can only see what's right in front of us, so we have
Yeah.
limited vision. But our
Yeah.
intuition doesn't. It has those high beams and it can see so far ahead. So, trusting in those high beams of our intuition and really just knowing that, as long as we're following, our job is just to follow our intuition. That's all. We don't have to know where it's going to end up. And sometimes, it's not going to meet our expectations. And we have to just have our self-talk and get back to that place of, I got to practice what I preach. And I know that I'm just following my intuition and that I did my job. And so I was hoping for this, but right, these are my own personal hopes and ego things that are coming now. Right. So we have to check ourselves because we probably had a lot of hopes and stuff wrapped around those dreams, but our intuition is taking us somewhere for a reason. So we just have to trust in the process.
Right. Yeah, that's so useful actually for somebody listening to this show right now who's wanting to have this beautiful vision or this dream that they want to unleash. And my point of view is, just as you're saying, we don't have control over the timeline a lot of the times because it's not just about achieving the goal, but it's about becoming that person who gets the goal, right? It's about personal transformation firstly. And maybe it's not about achieving that goal. Not all goals are worth your while for achieving. But it's about
you might not have wanted it anyway, right? Like sometimes
you might not have wanted it anyway.
And then you get there, you're like, whoa, this isn't what I really wanted,
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm saying is fall in love with the pursuit. Right?
Exactly.
Fall in love with the happiness that you get from pursuing the goals. Because a lot of people who I've spoken to who have achieved the goals, they don't really feel that sense of accomplishment as much as day in and day out, yearning, when am I going to get that goal? And sometimes when you fall in love with the pursuit, like right now, I used to have this goal of when will I get to that, number of downloads in my podcast? When will I have this beautiful large studio like Joe Rogan and have like an assistant who's going on to Google and doing all the research? But then I realized maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's about having a great time with Kim right now, this very moment, talking about consciousness and intuition.
And then the things that you're learning from the whole process, right? Like the things that you take away from such a wonderful exchange of ideas. And I love that. That's exactly it, right? We have to live in the moment. And it reminds me what came into my head when we were talking about this, because, being an oil painter and I was, working with my first painting class in college and it was an abstract painting class and we just had to make marks. I was like, well, this is like, no, you're enjoying the process. You're living and creating the process. You're experiencing the process. It doesn't matter about the outcome. It doesn't matter about what you're doing. It was really this metaphor for life. Do we want to go through all of this just for this outcome, or are we going to just experience it and live in the moment as a meditation or a spiritual practice of itself?
Yeah, what comes to my mind is a Morgan Freeman quote. I think you mentioned Morgan Freeman a while back. I think he said something along the lines of a painter paints, an actor acts, a dancer dances. That's it.
That's it. You're right. We do it and do it because you love it. And if you don't love it, then, maybe step back and wonder if that's, the right thing to be doing.
Interesting. So for somebody who's listening to the show right now or podcast right now, what are some ways in which one can hone and now strengthen and fine tune their intuition? What advice do you have for them?
Well, I always tell people the first thing I say, and if you go to my website, I have a little book called The Wake Up Your Intuition Guide. It's a 12-page guide. It's free. You can just download it and it goes into what I'm going to say in a much deeper detail and gives you exercises and stuff. But the first thing that I tell everybody is if you want to develop your intuition, the first thing to do is to slow down and create more space in your life because your intuition is there. Your intuition wants you to listen to it. But chances are, if you're like everybody else in the world, like us, you're really busy. You've got a million things on your calendar. And anytime you have a minute of downtime, you're probably looking at your phone, right? So take your phone away, carve out some white space, go for a walk, go for a run, go, take a bath, meditate, whatever it is that you love to do that just creates space in your life for your intuition to come in, right? Because how many times have you had those epiphanies when you're in the shower or driving in the car, those times when your mind is uninterrupted, right? So we have to get those sort of hamster wheel thoughts out of the way so our intuition can come in and speak to us in that stillness, So
Mm.
mindfulness, getting in that stillness and presence is really the foundation of building this culture of insightfulness and intuition that can guide us 24/7.
That's very. I love that advice because intuition stems from the feminine, right? So
Mhm.
you won't go forward and try to reach for the intuition, but you'll go backwards and make space. That makes
Really,
complete
you
sense.
just receive it. That's what's so great about intuition, right? And the mind, we've been busy using this side of our brain. The mind is think, think, think. It's
Yeah,
active, deduce,
active.
figure it out, right? It's very active.
Mhm.
Whereas with intuition, all you have to do is open up to it and it just comes to you. It's like magic. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to go out there and figure it out. You just have to receive it. And that's the trick. We have to create the space. We have to create the openness to receive it. And then, after that, we have to trust it enough to follow it, right? So it's sort of a two-part process.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Let's talk about the future now. I mean, we're rapidly moving towards the future. There's so many changes happening each and every day in terms of technology, but also society and the world as we know it. And there are talks about singularity, right? I'm sure you know about singularity,
Oh, yes.
where there's a point after which, humans and artificial intelligence will merge. But there are talks about this neural network that will be plugged wirelessly to all human beings, and all of it will be connected to a central hub, which in theory would be like a super brain, right? That is all knowing, all intuitive, that can predict what's going to happen in the future and has all the data, the big data, to know exactly what happened in the past. So, what are your thoughts on this? And can artificial intelligence ever experience or even develop human intuition?
Ha! That's a great question. In fact, I did a whole talk with Jesse Shell from the Morgan
Okay.
Freeman Show on that exact question. And so I would encourage you to watch that talk because he answered that question better than me, and he's super smart. He's a
Is
Carnegie.
that on YouTube?
It's in my summit that starts like the next couple days, and I'll be on there. I'll be there forever. You can go to my website and log into it and get it. And there's a talk, but you have to be part of the summit to get it. It's free, so you can do it. And Jesse talks. We talked for an hour about this, and it's one of the most amazing conversations I've had because Jesse is so smart and in a way that I just don't understand machines or technology. And he worked for Walt Disney. He's done amazing things with technology over the years. And so his answer was surprising because I asked him that. That was the question. I said, Jesse, will machines ever be able to have intuition? Because in my mind, I'm like, intuition is what differentiates us from the machines. It's what sets us apart, right? And his answer to me was, all machines have is intuition.
Mm.
Okay.
Oh,
So
unexpected.
yeah, check that. And I was like, really?
Okay.
And so and I'm not even going to try and explain it. So I would just say anybody who's interested, please go. You can watch that talk because it's really insightful on Jesse. But the long and short of that is that intuition is definitely something from my perspective. I think that's something that's going to keep us ahead of the machines because the kind of intuition that machines have now is sort of like unconscious intuition. Like it's very simple. It's very just, it says, I do go this one way. I feel this one way. Right.
Mhm.
So it makes decisions by the way it feels in a way the machines do the way they're programmed. So, but we're capable of a much, much vaster kind of intuition. And so that I do stand by my theory that, it is going to be the thing that sets us apart from the machines in the future because it's the place where we're ahead. It's what we can do better. They process information better, but we can still do intuition better. And intuition's like I said earlier, it's, it trumps everything. So, so in terms of all this other stuff with technology, I don't really know. I mean, we can imagine the possibilities with these kinds of things in the future, and I mean, it's hard to really say which way it's going to go and how it's all going to end up. But ultimately, I mean, our intuition is that connection to our humanity and to that divine part of us, right? And I always say intuition is that you should always develop your intuition because it's like one of the only things that you can take with you when you leave this world, because you have it. It's the way that your consciousness operates. When you're not in this body anymore, and so. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be downloading us into pods and putting us into robots. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe it could happen, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I wish it would. Like, I have a lot of pains. I could use a
Yeah.
robot body, I wouldn't mind that.
Well, we are becoming more and more bionic. I'm wearing earphones all the time. I've got this device that sends low frequency vibrations to switch off my negative stress response. My company is called Human Revolution Media.
Mm.
And Human Revolution to me is we're going to get there pretty soon, where the artificial intelligence is going to be so smart that it's going to take over or try to take over our role as human beings. And at that point, we'll have to really question who we truly are existentially, collectively, and find out what humanity really is and tap into these superhuman abilities, like you're saying, intuition and these siddhis that yoga
Mm.
talks about, superhuman abilities, levitation, telepathy.
Yep.
And then maybe there's going to be a war, artificial intelligence versus
It'd be a great story. It'd be a great novel. Yeah.
like Terminator, right? And maybe that's what it's going to take for us to be united and not fight like cats and dogs with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I love it. I love the way you're thinking. I mean, it's just, who knows? We're going to look back in 200, 300 years, and the world's going to be totally different.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Kim, for sharing all that you have so far. I mean, it's really interesting that we're having this conversation right now. Like I said, I'm having premonitions in my dreams. The other night, actually, I had a dream where I was in a room and multiple people were seated, and there was this lady that walked by me who seemed human, but when she looked at my eyes, there was a glint in her eyes, and it seems kind of surreal and scary because she was actually a robot.
What? In your dream?
In my dream, yeah. It was like so real. So there was a group of people sitting. I think they were getting trained about something. And this lady who was sort of moderating that meeting passed by me and she looked at me and her eyes, there was a glint in her eyes. It was like,
okay, so here's another idea I want to throw out at you to get those wheels turning.
yeah.
So I think, we talk about past lives a lot. Well, what about future lives? What about remembering the future? What about intuitively experiencing the future, right? So when you think about robots, something to kind of like put in there when you're having those experiences, and what if that was a vision of the future? What if that was a connection to the future, just in the same way we connect with the past with a lot of our things? So
I'm just waiting for Arnold Schwarzenegger to say, "Get in the chopper." So, Action Tribe, I hope you enjoyed today's session. Sometime in life, we have this sense of feeling blocked, right, and unable to move forward. And while there might be many reasons for you feeling stuck, sometimes it's just our analytical, logical mind that can make things hard for us. The logical mind is all about connecting the dots and making projections based on past successes or failures. In such a situation, what we really need to do, maybe, is to dive deep into our intuition and open up to a new sense of possibility for you and for the rest of humanity. Because as Carl Jung once put, intuition is perception via the unconscious that brings forth ideas and images and new possibilities and ways out of blocked situations. And with that being said, it is now time for the wisdom round. 4 questions so that our listeners can take note and take action. So, Kim, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
So, hearkening back to my oil painting days, my painting teacher drilled this phrase in our heads when we were making our artwork, and it totally applies to life. And I've been saying it ever since. It says, "Better to risk destruction than live with a compromise."
Wonderful.
And so think about that, every day when you're taking those chances or getting outside your comfort zone. Because when you're painting a picture, you can just kind of give up and be like, oh, I'm just going to compromise. It's, there's that mistake there that's you're just looking at and something's not right. But you're like, yeah, I might mess it up worse if I try to fix it. So I'm just going to leave it. But you're going to look at that painting for the rest of your life and you're going to see that mistake. So you go in there and it's better to go in and mess it up to fix a mistake than live with that mistake forever.
And if you could turn back time and spend 1 hour with someone who's living or dead, who would it be?
Oh my gosh, Paramahansa Yogananda for sure.
Got it. And what is it one thing you do in the morning or maybe in the evening that has improved the quality of your life?
Listening to my intuition. That's the best time, right when you wake up in the morning before you go to bed. Those little insights just pop right in.
That's amazing. And there are 3 or 4 listeners that have been listening to our entire conversation. To whoever you are, firstly, put in a comment and let me know who you are. But thanks a lot for listening to the entire
Yeah.
conversation. I really appreciate it.
Too.
Maybe one is my mom and the other is my dad. Uh,
That's maybe my mom too. Maybe it's our moms.
yeah. If you could recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be?
Really, I think one of the most influential books for me, and really actually for anybody who wants to work with intuition, I would recommend The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That book, that mindfulness, that place, understanding that work is a foundation for intuition work. When you've gotten that, when you've wrapped your brains around that and you've made your peace with that, then you're ready to move into insightfulness past the space of mindfulness.
Action Tribe, would you like to receive this book for free? That's right, because audible.com, which makes audiobooks, is offering all our listeners, that is you, one free audiobook with a free 30-day trial so that you can get to check out these amazing books. And the beauty is, just like podcasts, you can actually listen to a book, and in most cases, the author themselves are reading out the book to you. And in this case, you're not paying anything, it's a free book. So make sure that you claim your free credit. The Power of Now, get it online, and they've got numerous other books as well. But The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Go to my7chakras.com/free book. My seven is a word, my7chakras.com/free book, and start listening.
Awesome.
So, Kim, thank you so much for coming on our show, talking to us about all these amazing topics and sharing your stories. Before you go, what is that one thing that you're grateful for, and how can we find you online?
Well, right now, honestly, I'm just grateful to be healthy and to have a place to live and do this kind of work and reach people, because it's a crazy time. So I'm thankful for every little bit of peace that we have in this world right now.
And how can we find you?
Oh, you can check me out at my website, www.kimchestney.com. And also at my online intuition school, intuition-lab.com, where you do online trainings and classes.
Perfect. We'll have both these links up in the show notes. And you said you're active on Instagram as well, right?
Yeah, and Facebook, all social media.
So what is your Instagram handle?
Kim.Chestney or Radical Intuition. Yeah.
Perfect. So there you go, Action Tribe. If you are listening right now, or maybe watching this right now, do one thing. Take a screenshot of this episode, whatever platform you're on, and then tag me and tag Kim on Instagram so that we can share your conversation, your Insta story with our community. My handle is at My Seven Chakras, at My Seven Chakras. Tag us both, and then we'll share it with our community. And as next steps, finally, if you'd like to attend a foundational live breathwork session with me for 50 cents, just like the rapper, 50 cents, then visit my7chakras.com/breathwork intro. I always keep these sessions super simple, especially for beginners. My7chakras.com/breathwork intro. So, Kim, thank you so much for joining us today, talking to us about the importance, significance, and the power of intuition, and taking us one step closer to a human revolution.
Thank you. It's been great.
Wonderful. We will now end this broadcast. Thanks, everybody.